All right, good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for coming. My name is Rich Madalino. I have the privilege to serve as the county's Chief Administrative Officer, and we're here to celebrate an enormous victory for the people of Montgomery County. So a little bit about how this morning is going to go. We are going to hear from the county executive. We're going to hear from a number of county council members. We're going to hear from a number of community leaders who are intimately involved in making sure that this bill succeeded. And then we're going to have a bill signing right here. The county executive is going to sign the official version of the bill and a number of ceremonial copies for people to walk away with today. So you will see and remember at the end of the event, we're going to be doing the actual bill signing right here. So today culminates decades of work on behalf of so many people in this community, especially our County Executive Marc Elrich, who has been part of this effort for, again, years through his service at the Tacoma Park City Council, on the county council, just as a private citizen agitating for change. So, and there are plenty of people here who have been part of that fight for those many years, and we're going to hear from several of you to talk about how this happened. But first, we're going to start with our County Executive, Marc Elrich.
So, thank you all very much. I could talk about this topic forever, which I'm sure everybody's dreading. So I want to just thank everybody involved, all the council members who made this happen, and all of you who also made this happen. This never happens by just council members sitting at the front of the room. The ability for the council to take this seriously always depends on, the movements out of the community. And I remind people, in the minimum wage fight, which was the last big fight of this kind of scale, it started from a proposal from me, but it wouldn't have gone anywhere if you hadn't stood up and said this is what needs to happen. And that's how real policy gets made. And I'm so glad to see everybody here today, because this is your victory. And it's a victory for the people who work for you, it work with you, and it's a victory for everybody in this county. And there's a long list of organizations, which I don't have with me, but I know somebody's going to read the long list of organizations. But you all played just a critical role in getting this done, and I'm really happy to be here. I want to thank my housing director, Scott Britton, who's Scott was able to bring a very analytical approach to this, and his work, I think, was essential in working with the council, because he had to be able to show people how things would work and what this would mean. And I'm really happy I hired him, and I think he did an amazing job, and he's off on vacation, and he really deserves the vacation. I was bugging him at the airport last week with a question as he was leaving. I just thank all the council members who talked and compromised and came together. There were 3 different bills in this. There was a bill from Will, there was a bill from Natalie, there was a bill I sent over. And we took 3 bills and made sausage, which is what the legislative process is, to come up with a bill that could get 7 votes. And that's the critical thing, that people were not wedded to only one way of doing this, but that we were able to reach an agreement on how to do it best. And so I'm really excited about this. I've been working on this almost 16 years, first as a council member. I drafted 2 drafts of a rent stabilization bill. I circulated it to my colleagues. In 12 years on the council, not a single colleague walked into my office and said, "Can we talk about this?" I put it out there and it fell like a tree in a forest, which nobody hears. And that was, unfortunate. I came off the city council in Tacoma Park. I served there starting in 1987. And we had rent stabilization when I came in there. We still have it today. We faced a crisis around 2000 when we had lost a court case and we had to make major changes in our law. We made changes in our law to make sure it stayed legal and defensible. And I wanted to thank that council for the willingness to actually change the law rather than walk away from it. Because it's real easy to walk away from things, particularly when a judge says you have to fix it. And we actually fixed it. So I was really proud then to be part of that. But I also know, from Tacoma Park, what I saw in terms of improving people's lives. I mean, we have one of the most stable communities in the county. People don't move. They don't move. And, people say this is a bad thing. Homeowners don't move. People live in their houses as long as they possibly can. But when tenants don't move, it's like, oh my God, something's wrong here. Tenants move because they can't afford the rent anymore most of the time. That's the truth. And you live from year to year, and when the rent reaches a point you can't afford it anymore, you're looking for another place to live. Homeowners don't face that. And I keep trying to talk to the broader public that homeowners don't have any of the experiences that tenants have. They don't worry about where they're going to find a house next year. They don't worry about, is my rent going to go up 6% or 8% or 10%, because they've got that long-term stability. And the idea that we have in society a whole class of people who don't know what stability means is actually a problem. People ought to be secure. And the most immediate things you see, the two things I'll just mention quickly, one is I was a former school teacher. Stable rents meant stable communities. That meant kids stayed in school and multiple children from families went to the same school. They build relationships in the community. Kids aren't traumatized. And if you don't think having to move every year or two is traumatizing for a little kid, you're wrong. It is stressful. When you hear parents saying, we have to find another house, we can't afford to live here anymore, I mean, I'm going to give up my friends, I'm going to give up my school, I got to go someplace else. That is not healthy for children. So I think, the thing that rent stabilization does is it provides community stabilization. That's good for education. The other thing it does for adults, it gives them a reason to get involved in the community. If I think I'm leaving next year, then I'm not involved in community groups, because the community I'm fighting for today might not be the community I'm going to live in a year from now. If you know that you're going to have the ability to stay where you live, then all of a sudden things matter to you. Things you put up with because you thought it was going to be temporary, you decide I don't have to put up with this anymore. I'm going to live here. I want you to do something about this. And you know it is homeowners, because homeowners will always come to you and say, I pay taxes here, I want this fixed. Renters can't say that. And they don't say that. And what you want is everybody to say, I pay taxes here. This condition, this situation is not acceptable. I want you to do something about it. So while it creates more people demanding action out of us, that's a good thing. I welcome that. Some critics say this is going to stifle development, and the part I love is it's the same ones who complain there hasn't been any development here for the last 2 decades, where there was no rent stabilization. So blaming something on this bill that is a pre-existing condition is a bit ridiculous. And the fact is that there's a report that Park and Planning did, my favorite organization. I always love to cite things they say, particularly when they're factual reports. And when they studied the White Flint situation, they said, why is no housing being built in White Flint? The landlord said, the potential builder said, because the rents aren't high enough. So here we are trying to stabilize rents, and for them, they're not building, not because of rent control, and they could set the rents in any level they want, but the rents aren't high enough. And that comes down to, the folks who've been able to move into Montgomery County often don't have the rents that would justify $2,500 a month in rent for a 1-bedroom apartment. It's also, a failure of the planning department, and I'll say this bluntly. They don't plan for complete communities. They plan for complete streets. But the idea that you would have planned Bethesda for a variety of housing to serve a mix of population rather than settling for 15% affordable units, and then an enormous gap. The average MPD in Montgomery County for a 1-bedroom is about $1,600, and 2 bedrooms, $1,800. I checked this morning. 1-bedroom starting rents in Bethesda, $2,500. 2-bedroom starting rents, $3,500. $2,500 starting rent requires a $100,000 income. If you spend the most that you're recommended to spend is 30%. And that $3,500 starting rent requires a $140,000 income. That's what they build there. And it never dawned on Park and Planning that you're building a very segregated community if this is what your idea of housing is. So this is on all of us, and we've got to do a better job in terms of how we plan things. It's great to plan complete streets. You ought to be planning complete communities. And you know, the other point I'll make is Montgomery County has 40,000 approved units almost in a pipeline. That means the developer could go in and pull their building permit. There's not a regulatory hurdle left to climb, and it's still sitting there. And that goes back to the comment about the rents aren't high enough. So enough about blaming this action this council made for the lack of housing that hasn't occurred for the last 20 years. We need to get real about what's going on here and deal with it. To those who say the market's going to solve the problem, there's a recent report from the Harvard Joint Center on Housing Studies. This just came out. We just saw it a couple of days ago. And it said this country is having a housing boom. Unfortunately, none of it's for low-income people. It is all focused at the top tier of incomes. It is not focused. And so if anybody says there's not demand, I would submit that when you've got 50,000 people in this county making $50,000 or less and paying half their income for rent, there's plenty of demand. Nobody's meeting the demand. So let's stop pretending that demand will solve the problem. Milton Friedman does not have any answers to our question. So we're actually on track for housing numbers that I think the council would be happy with. We were able to correct a mistake by one of the housing reporting agencies because our numbers apparently weren't going in. We produced almost 4,000 units the last 2 years in Montgomery County. But 15% of them would be MPDUs, so do the math. I mean, it's like 600 units a year at best. So that's what we're doing. We are building, and we're on track to build 40,000 over 10 years to get really close to it. But that's not enough in terms of who lives here and what we need to provide. So there are a lot of things that are going on. This bill is going to make an enormous difference for people. This is worth fighting for. And there are people who are going to be able to stay in their homes and have some security, to have a sense of what their long-term costs are going to be and make decisions about where they want to live and be able to stay there. And I really want to thank the 7 of you. Evan's not here. I know he's on vacation. That's allowed. Everybody should do that. He's not? Okay. Okay. Still, well, he's working someplace else. There's plenty of work to do. So I want to thank you all for coming together on this. I know how hard this was. There was a lot of back and forth. There was a lot of talking among everybody in this group to come together. And if people had not been open to listening to each other and working with each other and trying to get to yes, because it's not yes for anybody individually. It was yes for the community, and that to me is the important thing. I could care less about ideology and all this other stuff. This is about human beings, and it's about what happens to human beings in their lived experiences in Montgomery County. And at the end of the day, people were able to come together around what's going to happen to people and not fuss over what belief system does this reflect. It's about the belief that human beings should have stable housing and should be able to live in this community. That's the only recognition of a belief system we need. If everything was done like that, we'd have far fewer problems in society if we focused on what do people need and what do we need to do to treat them right. So I'm excited about this. I'm optimistic that we're going to continue to make progress. There are some other things we need to do. We need to deal with no net loss of affordable housing. This county started with 42,000 affordable units in 2000. If you'd gone back another 10 years, it probably would have been twice as many, but 42,000 in 2000. It was down to about 22,000 by 2020. Park and Planning projects we lose another 11,000 by 2030, and that was pre-COVID. COVID has already known accelerated rents. And so we're losing the naturally occurring affordable housing, which are units that have no controls on them. These are just units that the market has raised to prices that people who live there can no longer afford. We need to deal with more ownership in the community, continuing to provide only rental housing, and this is frankly on our nonprofit partners as well. Everybody's got to shift their thinking to wealth building and equal opportunity. If all we offer tenants and people in lower incomes, which frankly in Montgomery County is people making $70,000, $80,000 a year in some cases, if all we offer them is rental units, they never get to build wealth in the community. And so there's this enormous wealth divide between white and black people and brown people. And that's something we've got to tackle, because if it's not going to go away by itself, it's going to require deliberate actions. And we've got to be creative about what the county does. So we've been creative. We bought Westchester West. We put a lot of money in it to protect that development. We've been working with, on Randolph Road to build a mixed project that has both rental and ownership, but almost all the units, I think all the units there are actually affordable. So those are things we need to do, and we've had council support for those things. So stay tuned, more is going to be coming, and we're going to need more support to do this. But this is probably the most righteous fight anybody can have. There's nothing more righteous than fighting for a person's right to stay and enjoy a life that's stable and have the opportunities. And I just want to say this is a momentous occasion for Montgomery County. It is, other than the minimum wage law, probably the two most important things that we have done in this county in terms of equalizing things and raising people up. And so I want to thank the council for everything you did. Give them an applause. And give yourselves an applause for what you did. If you had not been in those rooms, if these issues had been debated in empty halls, the outcome would have been different. Without your presence, and you've got to keep this in mind, without your presence, things do not move. So be present, be regularly present. What we do up here matters. And what we do up here, if we don't hear from you, is done in partly a vacuum. So please continue your work. Thank everybody for what they did. It's a really great victory today, and I'm really happy we're celebrating this. And I spent a long time trying to get this done. I will say finally, it was good to have a council where this discussion did not fall on deaf ears. That with the election of this council in November, they started on the work to create this bill within a month. So that says a lot about what elections can do and why elections matter. That election changed the debate in Montgomery County. And again, you're the ones that voted. Thank you.
Thank you very much, County Executive Elrich. We also, of course, want to thank not just the council members, the council staff, your individual staff members, the council professional staff for doing that, and certainly led by Valeria Carranza, who is here representing Council President Evan Glass. This is not just local news, this is national news. Which is why we're thrilled to have a representative from our fine U.S. Congressman Jamie Raskin. Kathleen Connor is here. Congressman Raskin and County Executive Elrich have been partners in good crime. What's the John Lewis? Good trouble. Good trouble. I know not good crime. But partners in good trouble. For years. So, but yeah. So we are now going to hear first from the two co-sponsors, the two sponsors of the bill, and I think it's very interesting when they come up, Councilmember Natalie Fani Gonzalez and Councilmember Sidney Katz. Councilmember Katz is the longest serving member of the County Council. Councilmember Fani Gonzalez is tied for the newest member of the County Council, which shows the dynamic and the partnership that came together to pull together a wonderful bill. So, Councilmember Fani Gonzalez.
Good morning. I would say this is not a new issue for me. As many people know, I've been working on housing for several years, coming from the Park and Planning Commission, and also when I was at CASA many years ago. I think the challenge number one that we faced was fear. That was it. and I knew it right from the beginning. And I think understanding fear is crucial if you really want to pass laws. It's not my way or the highway. It's compromising and listening to those who have fear and understanding their struggles so you can actually accomplish. How are you doing? So we can accomplish something positive. I'm the type of person that if I'm gonna do something, I get it done. And I also am the type of person that when I see that something is about to fail, I gotta do something about it no matter what. So when I saw one of the bills being introduced, I said, oh boy, we are in trouble. Okay, so I said, let's make let's make an alternative and then have people come together and get something done on this important issue because, and I said it to many of our allies from the very beginning, this is gonna get done this year, right now. There's no way I'm gonna be dealing with this every single year within the next 12 years, not happening under my watch. So we did what had to do to make it happen. And I am so grateful to Council Member Sidney Katz because he was there with me from the very first day. It's about compromising and understanding that for us to build community, we need to work together. And this idea that, especially coming from the Park and Planning Commission, this idea that all developers think one way and all progressives think another way, it's false. I've had developers that have come to me and said, Natalie, this is a good thing. Natalie, our average rent increase is only 2%. Natalie, being able to predict what's gonna happen in Montgomery County is good for business. That's why I fought so hard against the sunset. That will have killed this whole thing. I have my values, and there are certain things that are good and compromised, and all of those things, the really bad things, actually, happen on the bill, thank God. But also understanding my position and understanding that it's not just the message, but who the messenger is. Okay, there are amendments that we debated on last week on full council that were, honestly, we were very intentional on who the sponsor of those amendments will be. It wasn't that it happened right out of the blue. Like, it took a lot of compromising to say this person will do this one, this other person will do that one. Because at the end of the day, I need 6 votes. It's math. What do we need to do to make sure we have the 6 votes that we need to get this passed? And we ended up with 7. That's a beautiful thing, and it's a reflection of this county. We love talking about values, and we love to romanticize this, but if you talk about values, you gotta walk the talk, period. And I think Montgomery County is an example throughout the nation that, yes, we want businesses, yes, we want development, but also we wanna make sure that we protect the workforce. We wanna make sure that we protect our tenants, our residents, people of all income levels. That's our duty. That's why I got elected. I'm not doing things because I wanna go to the next thing and get the headlines and get the tweets. No, I'm gonna do something because I wanna be able to find a solution that move us forward and not being stuck with this for 12 years. So that's the difference, and I think that's what we did here. I'm very proud of every single council member who's here today, including Council President Evan Glass, for their leadership. I know it was not easy, but we got it done. The bill has, as you all know, very quickly, it's 3 plus CPI, which is the inflation cap at 6. Again, I chose 3 because the average rent increase was 3. So it was my way to say, hey, I'm going above what you're doing right now. You shouldn't be complaining. Cap at 6. I was able to get 6 votes. Move on. Actually, it was minutes before I walked onto the PHP committee, the Planning, Housing, and Parks Committee, where I was able to secure that 6 votes. And I had to say I am very thankful to Councilmember Sales, who that day, she put it in writing. She said, I want something that will be capped at either 5 or 6. Most council members refuse to put things in writing, even though I was asking them, help me out. I'm in the committee, put it in writing. Don't just tell me that you're gonna go for it in full council, put it in writing now. She did. And I love you for that, so you know. And it was hard. Other issues, then we got to compromise. The new construction, you're gonna be exempt if for 23 years. It's not 23 years since the bill starts. It's like 23 years, like for example, you count from today minus 23, and it continues to move that target. That's what it passed, and people need to have that clear. After this, we're gonna work on the regulations, and all those definitions will be part of the bill, so stay tuned on that, and that all comes in front of the county council, and you all can see it and share your opinion. Exemptions, very important, but also making sure that this myth that haven't rent stabilization is against investment, it's false, and that's the bottom line. And I think that's a message not just for that we're saying here in Montgomery County, that's something that it has to be spread around the nation, because every single municipality and county and city should be doing the same thing as we did today. It's not easy, but it's our duty. With that, I'm gonna invite my friend, Councilmember Sidney Katz, for being such a leader and sticking up with me after all this. So thank you, Sidney.
Well, good morning, everyone, and thank you. I did appreciate you saying, not the crime part, I didn't think that was good, but I did appreciate the agitating part. And you could say that not just on this topic about Mark, he's an agitator. But this really, and I have to tell you candidly, I mean, it's so much has already been said, I'm gonna try my best not to repeat it, but this is really a place where I didn't believe I'd be standing here when the whole thing started. I did not. But this is so much about economic development, and that gets passed over. You know, everybody, and we do, we need to make sure that our economic development is gonna be much better than what it's been. But when you have economic development, you need people to work. You need people to have a place to live. You need a place. You need so much, and this is, I keep talking about a puzzle. This is a puzzle that needs to fit together. Let's face facts, this process was not pretty. It was not. We were all over the place. You need conversations, but we were all over the place. We had people that were very, I guess the word annoyed or beyond, about that we would even consider this. But we needed to do something. And the question is, what is the something that you end up doing? We listened to all. And I know there are people who are still very annoyed at this, but we listened to all. This is not about just rent control or rent stabilization. This is about everything associated with it. There are, as Natalie pointed out, there are so many exemptions on this. This is not strictly, this is the price. There's 23 years if someone decides that they're going to build, and we need to talk about that in 2 seconds, but there's 23 years that they're exempt from this. 23 years. A patent is only 20 years, and we've exempted them for 23 years. We are not stifling investment. We are saying, please invest. We will work with you. And we need to make certain that all of us work together to make this a great success so that other areas, so other places in America, and not just Maryland, but in America, can say, you know what, they always said rent control didn't work, except there's a place called Montgomery County, Maryland, and it worked. And that's what we did when we did minimum wage, and we had a few conversations about minimum wage, might we add, but we got it there. And what we did is we worked together. We were concerned not only about the people getting the minimum wage, we were concerned about the people paying the minimum wage. We were concerned about the small business. We were concerned about everything. It's not just what's on the poster in front of you. It's how deep it goes. And that's what we did. We need to make certain that we continue to streamline if someone wants to build here. We need to make it so that they can want to come, that they don't have the excuses. We need to remind them that if you do a capital improvement, that is an addition to what you're doing. We want your return on investment. We want you to invest, and we want your return on investment, and we need to work together on that. At the end of the day, this was an absolute compromise. And sometimes compromises are, not always, as we say, pretty. But it was a compromise to get us where we needed to be. This is all about supply and demand. This room needs to continue to work together. My colleagues, and I'm very proud of all of them. I agree not just with the groups that's here, but I also wanted to make certain that the group that didn't vote for this for a variety of reasons. They also want to make sure that Montgomery County is the best place that it can possibly be. We didn't agree on this topic, and we need to move on and agree on the topics we can agree on. But all of us have the best interest of the county at heart, and all of us are going to have to work together to continue to make Montgomery County the greatest place in the entire United States. Thank you all for listening.
So now we're going to hear from 4 additional council members who are all part of the effort to get the bill passed. We are going to hear them. Why don't you come up together? Councilmember Will Jawando, Councilmember Kristen Mink, Councilmember Lorianne Sales, Councilmember Kate Stewart.
Thank you very much, Rich. County Executive Elrich, it was great to work with you from the beginning on this bill. You mentioned the hodgepodge of bills that we put together. To all my council colleagues, this is an amazing day. We are the first jurisdiction in the state of Maryland to pass permanent rent stabilization, first county in the state of Maryland, not jurisdiction, first county. Because I know Councilmember Stewart will correct that. And I have my staff doing the research, and I think we are the largest jurisdiction in the country to have a cap at 6%. The largest jurisdiction in the country to have a cap at 6%. There's other states that have been 6 plus or 10% cap. That matters because we, in the 70s, I don't know which the date it was, we passed the exclusionary zoning law, and we're the first in the country to pass it. And that allowed us to have the 12.5 or 15% now in some jurisdictions at workforce housing when we built new developments. Now we need to update that law. It's not producing enough. But it shows we've been a leader. We had rent stabilization in Montgomery County 50 years ago. It was temporary, and the law sunset, which is why it was really good we defeated the sunset, because when you have a sunset, here we are 50 years later, just now getting permanent stabilization. It also shows that this will provide stability. I think that is a key word today, not only for the families, but for our economy, right? If you think about our inclusionary zoning law, that is baked into the price of doing business in Montgomery County. I went back and pulled some articles for when we were passing that law, and it was almost like you were looking at the same arguments that were being made against this bill. No one's going to build here. Business is going to run away. It's going to hurt our economy. Now, those same folks who are builders say with pride, we have an inclusionary zoning law in Montgomery County. This will be the same way. We will look back at this day and say we created stability, not only for families who are burdened, but we've created stability in the housing market, and we're going to keep building housing. So don't believe that. Second thing, for the young people out there and the families, like this kid in front of you, I still think I'm a kid, who bounced around from rental housing to rental housing in this county, in Langley Park and Quebec Terrace and White Oak and downtown Silver Spring, in search of quality, in search of stability, in search of affordability. You are going to have that in Montgomery County. I'll never forget, I've told her story before, but the many partners who helped, among them were Everyday Canvassing. Are they in the house today? Yeah, Everyday Canvassing's here. Who were critical in putting a face and a name on these stories of rent increases. You know, and it was often talked about, well, who complains? Yes, we had a 200% increase in who complained, but there's a lot of steps before you complain. You have to realize you have a right. You have to not be worried about retaliation. You have to understand the complicated lease document. You have to go to DHCA and find the number and complain. But there's so many people that self-evicted or moved. And I remember this one story of this young woman and her son in Briggs Cheney who, during the pandemic, when we had stabilization, which this group helped pass too, we had 2 forms of stabilization during the pandemic because we needed it, and all of our colleagues supported that. She moved, she self-evicted from her current 2-bedroom to a 1-bedroom in the same complex, and she was working full-time so her son could stay at his home school. And we got MCEA here because they know how important it is for her son to stay in that home school. She moved and negotiated because she couldn't deal with a $50 rent increase a month and was working full-time. That's what people are dealing with right now. And this will allow, and she had protection. That was an illegal increase, but she didn't know that she had the protection. So that brings me to my final point until I turn to my colleagues. We still need you. Jews United for Justice, CASA, UFCW, Everyday Canvassing, MCEA, SEIU 500, Renters Alliance. Yeah, I'm gonna get them all out. Mark made me do the hard part. Okay, we have the list. We're gonna get through the whole list. This is not over. We passed the bill. Mark's gonna sign it today. It will become law in 91 days, but then we have regulations. Then we, most importantly, have to make sure that the people like that mom and her kid know they have the protection. And that's what we're gonna need your help with, to make sure that they don't self-evict. Those are the things that keep me up at night, the people who move preemptively, who are displaced because they don't know they have a right. And that's gonna be the work over the next year, when next spring this bill officially takes effect. So I wanna thank you. I'm just so excited. I wanna thank my partner in Good Trouble, all my partners in Good Trouble, but particularly Councilmember Kristen Mink. Yes, you do. Who worked with me in the county executive and our colleagues. Everyone played a role. This was mentioned by my colleagues. Everyone played an integral role in getting this bill across the finish line. We couldn't have done it without everyone here and without every group. We needed that pressure. It was uncomfortable at times. It was sometimes angry pressure. Some people were crying, but that's because this is so important, and we needed all of it. And Councilmember Mink has been a great partner. I'm so glad to have some help on the council with these 6 new folks on the council. I love Sidney Katz, he's my seat buddy, and I love my current colleagues, but it is so good. Elections have consequences, and a consequence of this previous election was permanent rent stabilization in Montgomery County. So thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. This is a great, great day. I am so thrilled to be here with my colleagues. I know Council President Glass sends his best, and with all of you today. This is really exciting, and I know that this has been many, many years in the works, and that you all have been putting in that effort for this entire time because of the urgency that individual families, thousands of them, have been feeling all across our county for all this time. And I am so grateful to be part of the council and part of the crew that gets to put this over the line, but I know that we all just give a tremendous, tremendous amount of credit and of gratitude to all of you all for all of the work that you have done. And so that is the number one thing that I want to say to you all here today is thank you, and incredible job. Incredible job. I wanted to read back one story that I got to share on Bill Introduction Day, just to remind us of one of those stories. We tend to hear about a lot of economic impacts when we hear about the fears that Councilmember Fanny Gonzalez mentioned, which is so true. What about the economic impact? And that is something that I know every single one of us cares about. We want to see development continue. That's also part of the solution. But there is many important parts of economic impact where we see tremendous benefits from rent stabilization. And that far too often gets left out of the equation. Of course, there are workforce issues. We have our workforce who, like MCEA, like SEIU Local 500, who see the impact on students and on families, but also members of the workforce themselves. we need them to be able to live here and be near where they work, and that is part of the economic development story. And then there is also the impact on individual families having nothing to do with workforce. That is also part of that story. When we look at social determinants of health, having housing stability has impacts on the economic outcomes, the health, the mental and physical health outcomes, the academic outcomes, and the community ties that relate to public safety. All of those are directly tied in many studies to housing stability. So any conversation about the economic impact of rent stabilization must, to be responsible, that conversation must include those social determinants of health. And when I heard that our Office of Legislative Oversight was going to be producing a report on rent regulations, and they're wonderful, and for those who don't know, they are not partisan in any way. They are just a research wing providing, gathering and providing useful information for us. But one of my asks for them was to make sure that they included research on social determinants of health, because that must be part of the conversation. And as we continue to advocate for all of our regional partners, and as you all continue to do that work, I think it's important that we continue to elevate that side of the conversation as well. So I'm gonna just quickly read one of the stories to remind us of all of that. This comes from Alexis Kurtz. She said, "I'm a public school teacher who's recently experienced a 7% rent increase. I've also faced mold, oil paint melting in the bathroom and dripping down our faces when we shower, and flooding during heavy rain. My rent is nearly 50% of my paycheck, and that's with a roommate. I'm lucky enough to be a middle school teacher at a school that gives free breakfast, which I usually eat for lunch. If my rent increases again, I'm going to have to move out of Montgomery County and get a job somewhere else." So you can really see all of those pieces coming together in that story. And I'm so glad that we get to change that story moving forward. And I know that work is going to continue regionally, and I thank you for that. But on this day, we are here to celebrate, and we are especially here to celebrate you and the tremendous good that you all have done for our county. So thank you so much.
It's still morning. Good morning, everyone. I just want to thank our county executive for inviting us here today and quickly getting this bill signed into law. This is a tremendous opportunity to be here with my colleagues. We just got elected, and we were able to work with each and every one of you. For the last year, we've been working on this. It was not easy, but look at what happens when you persevere to get things done. We heard, as we've mentioned, from many advocacy organizations, community groups, associations, municipalities, the county executive, everyday residents. We all wrestled with the components of this bill. During the discussion, I recalled my own story of what brought me to Montgomery County in search of affordable housing as a single mom, and how I had to struggle to make ends meet and continue to move up 270 in order to afford a home. And now my daughter, who's a graduate, these challenges are still facing our young people. And what concerns me is that there were so few people that showed up in the room to speak against that. It was the people who were impacted by the high rents, the unpredictability of rents, the threats of eviction, the instability. Those are the stories that carried us through and motivated our colleagues to build consensus to see this through. Immediately after the signing of the bill, my colleague, my staff member who was wearing one of my shirts with council member sales on it, he went into a convenience store, and the cashier asked, "Do you work at the council? Did you all decide on that rent stabilization bill?" And he said, "Yes, We did. It passed today. And he said, thank you. We are so grateful. I don't have to move. That's not the only story that we've heard. Based on his feedback, we are moving in the right direction regardless of what the naysayers say. We found a compromise to ensure that our residents can depend on stable rents. We made exemptions to ensure that economic development, which is central to our economy, will continue. 23 years. We went from 10 years, 15 years, 23 years from when you break ground. You're not going to have to worry about whether or not you're going to cap rent or whether or not you're going to be able to meet your financial obligations as a developer. I also passed my first ZTA to accelerate the process for building affordable communities, mixed-use communities. We're hoping that the combination of this rent stabilization bill, the regulatory environment, will create an economic recovery system that ensures we continue to be a community that works for everyone here. Everyone here, not just the select few, not just the ones with the big bucks, but for the everyday residents. The residents that elected us and entrusted us with their vote to make decisions on their behalf. This is an incredible day in our county. It's a historic day in our county, and I'm so proud to stand here with my colleagues to celebrate this legislation. Montgomery County will continue to be a place where we innovate, where we continue to build communities where people can live healthy lives, live safely in communities that are built with quality partners. And we will continue to thrive. And I continue to work with my colleagues to make good trouble, because this is just the beginning. We have a lot of work ahead of us, but we appreciate the partnership, and we are so grateful that you are here to celebrate all of the hard work that you have helped us see through today. So thank you so much.
It's still morning, and I think I'm the last elected official. I know, oh, we do, okay. I'll be super fast. Kate Stewart, and I am honored to be here with all of you today as the county council member who represents the district that has the most renters in the county. This was incredibly important to me, and I am so optimistic and relieved that we are here today to sign this bill. This is a complex bill, as my colleagues have said. It took a lot of work, a lot of compromise. I want to also thank my colleagues for their cooperation and the work that we did together, and really thank all of you. I think we've said it before, but I think it needs to be underscored, and I know we'll read out the names, but the wide coalition of groups who spoke up in support of this work really shows the need that we have in our community. And as I've talked about from day one, this has been about making sure we have stable, safe, affordable home for our residents, as well as making sure that those who invest in our communities and build here get a fair rate of return on that investment. Those have been the goals, and the policy that is going to be signed into law today by our county executive, I believe meets all those goals. And I am so proud to be here with all of you. And I'm going to be super quick. This is something that has been a long time in coming. And the people who I have held close in doing this work when it got really hard were the parents, and particularly the mothers, who I know face great hurdles in making sure that their families and their children have stable homes to live in. Because my mom struggled. She's not with us any longer, and I wish she was so she could see this day and what we could have accomplished. But I particularly want each and every one of the moms out there who have sleepless nights, who are thinking about how they're going to provide a stable life for their child so that they can plan for their futures. I know this doesn't solve everything, but I hope it helps get us where we need to go as a community, and I thank you for all your dedication and work.
Thank you very much, council members, for your words. It was a pleasure on behalf of the executive branch to work with all of you. I know the county executive mentioned Director Scott Bruton, all of the staff of the Department of Housing and Community Affairs, the office of the county attorney, certainly the office of the county executive, and Ken Hartman Espada, who is our director of strategic partnerships. It was a great team effort, and it's always an honor to work with you to make progress for the people of the county. Now, I get to read a long list of organizations that were part of this partnership. It's so long, it's going to take us from morning into afternoon to go through the whole list. But Action in Montgomery, and if you're here, wave. Action in Montgomery, Ask the Climate Question, African Communities Together, Anak Bayan Moko, Bethesda African Cemetery Coalition, Biodiversity for a Livable Climate, Casa de Maryland, Charter. We weren't sure if you were in the house. Really, that's great to see. Charter House Tenants Association, Chesapeake Climate Action Network, Cold Spring Plaza Tenants Association, Everyday Canvassing, Francophone Africans Alliance, Impact Silver Spring, Jews United for Justice, Liuna Local 11, the Maryland Poor People's Campaign, Maven Tenants Union, the MoCo Pride Center, the Montgomery County BIPOC Green New Deal Internship, Montgomery County branch of the NAACP, the Montgomery County Green New Deal for Social Housing, Montgomery County Democratic Socialists of America, the Montgomery County Education Association, the Montgomery County Racial Equity More Network, Our Revolution Montgomery County, Progressive Maryland, Progressive Neighbors, Renters United of Maryland, SEIU Local 500, SEIU 1199, United Healthcare Workers East, Shepherd's Table, the Renters Alliance, Transit Alternatives to Mid-County Highway Extended, the Team Coalition, Trans Maryland, UFCW 1994 McGeo, United Food and Commercial Workers Union Local 400, Unite Here Local 23, Unite Here Local 25, the Unitarian Universalist Cedar Lane Environmental Justice Ministry, and Young People for Progress. A long and exciting list of people who have come together to build a progressive coalition that hopefully, as you've heard from the executive and many of the council members, will continue to form a core of getting progressive work done during this term. Now we're going to hear from a few representatives from those organizations. First up is Alex Vasquez from Casa de Maryland.
Good afternoon, right? We stand united and filled with immense gratitude as we become the first county in the state of Maryland to pass a groundbreaking permanent rent stabilization bill. This momentous occasion and achievement would not have been possible without the tireless efforts, dedication, and voices of our incredible community, organizations, faith groups, unions, and visionary elected officials. Together, we have co-created a meaningful policy that we hope will bring stability and predictability to renters throughout the county. Together, we have shown that when we join forces, we can bring about lasting change that benefits us all. The journey to this significant milestone was not easy, but it exemplifies the power of collective action and the strength of our shared commitment to social justice. This bill was not just about housing, but it was about ensuring dignity, fairness, and a sense of belonging for everyone who calls Montgomery County home. As we move forward, let us be inspired by this moment of triumph. Let it remind us that change is possible when we come together with a shared purpose, driven by compassion and a vision of a better future. Together, we can overcome any challenge and leave a legacy of hope for generations to come. Thank you. Si se puede.
All right, I will try to model Alex and be brief. Good morning, good afternoon. I messed it up already. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Will Roberts, Board Chair of the Montgomery County Renters Alliance. I bring you greetings today on behalf of some of our Renters Alliance board members and staff who are here, and some of our members in the audience, as well as our Executive Director, Matt Losak, who's here with the flu. Otherwise, couldn't keep him out of this room. It's a great day, as folks have said, right? Most importantly for the thousands of renters from all across the county whose efforts in providing testimony, calling council members, educating their neighbors, speaking at public events and to the press, and most importantly, being voting county residents. It's the reason our buttons say I'm a renter and I vote. Being voting county residents has made a difference today. The Renters Alliance is really happy to be here. We've been at this work since our founding in 2010, coming out of the county's tenants work group, where one of the recommendations was to pass a rent stabilization policy, which you know, County Executive Elrich, right? And since then, have been really proud to work with everybody in this room to build up this renters' rights movement in the county that's been focused on expanding public consciousness of renters' issues with, again, as I said, the scores of allies here talking about the need for stable, affordable, quality housing that's essential to community health, welfare, and prosperity. And so today, with the signature of this bill, we have a huge moment to celebrate. And as has been said, no bills are perfect, right? This is a compromise legislation, but this is a compromise that was necessary for progress, and today is definitely real progress. So we look forward to the work that's gonna continue to happen, because our work is not over today. Today's a pause to celebrate, then tomorrow we get back to work, right? Or maybe this afternoon we get back to work, because we know that we've got more to do in this county to make sure that when we say housing is a right, we mean it, and it is etched in policy, right? And that we continue to advance renters' rights and make sure that affordable, quality, and stable housing is what is the law of the land in our county and beyond. So we are really happy to be here with you. We want to thank the council members here present who showed the courage that your constituents demanded, who did not bend to the pressure from those groups, Councilmember Joanda, that you talked about, that have been sort of recycling talking points for 40 years, right? Who really got together in a room to figure out what will work best for all folks at the table, but most importantly for the tenants that you all represent. So I want to thank you personally from us, and thank you again to our friends and allies. Couldn't be more happy to be here today, and we're going to continue to go fight win, but we're going to celebrate today. Thank you so much.
Greetings, everybody. I would never thought that I would be in this predicament to talk in front of all of you, but now that I'm here, let me tell you something, a little something. 4+ years ago, when Democrat Socialists of America presented the idea of rent stabilization, there was a lot of negative feedback. What, rent stabilization? What? No, never will pass. Now look at us now. What started off as an idea, it came into fruition. There was some fear about it. I say there was courage. Some people fought. I say it was a challenge. Overall, we did what we had to do. Some people say we had to negotiate. I say it was a slight compromise. But this is not the end. Rockville is not covered, not protected. Gaithersburg is not protected. So all I want to say is, for Gaithersburg and Rockville tenants, we see you, we hear you, and we're coming for you. Oh, and I just wanted to say, for those who don't know me, I started out as just a regular everyday worker. I lost everything. I checked into the shelter. I had to start all over again, so I know what's it like to lose your stuff and rebuild yourself. I'm president at Young People for Progress, and I'm also an organizer for the Montgomery County Racial Equity Network. These organizations, they taught me a lot about morals, values, and struggles. And the most important thing is giving a voice. I just want to say that all of your voices will be heard. This is the people's bill, and not only that, this is everyone's love, everyone's courage, and this is not the end, like Will Jawando said. Thank you.
Phew, what a day. I'm looking for the organizers that made this happen. I'm trying to point y'all out. Can I get a round of applause for all the organizers? My name is Kush Karod. I am with Everyday Canvassing, which is an organization that premise is simple. We knock doors. For the last 3 years, we have knocked 50,000 doors. We have connected residents to government resources. We have connected them to elected officials. We have knocked doors with elected officials. And we have connected them to movement spaces and organizing. And our work is simple. We're data-driven, meaning we lean on the facts. We don't build a narrative. We listen to the people. And we're community-driven. And that means that we bring people in. The last year, we have talked to thousands of renters about what rent stabilization means to them. They are the ones that have spammed council members' inboxes. They have spammed their phone, their voicemails, they have emailed because this is important to them. And no matter who we talk to, whether they are a single mother of 3 whose apartment is being flooded, whether it is a young college student or an immigrant that just moved in, they all say the same thing. They want a good school, they want a good job, and yeah, they want safe and affordable housing. And today we could say that rent stabilization is one of those solutions. As everyone said, this is not the end. This is just the beginning. But we have to remember that this is work that was dreamed by renters, organized by renters, made possible by renters, and today it is a reality. So I want to thank you all. I want to thank the county executive for signing, hopefully. I want to thank the council members for working with us. I want to thank all of you for listening to us and making sure this is a reality. And I want to thank the renters for making this a possibility and sharing their stories, because without them, Montgomery County would not be what it is. Thank you.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.
Yes, we can.